revealed, the secretive Catholic group operating in a small Michigan town that gives shelter, legal help to protect hundreds of priests accused of UAL abuse, saying, "We turn no priest away." The small non-profit group, Obispano Sacerdote, would reportedly work out of a series of unmarked buildings in rural Michigan. They would provide money, shelter, transport, legal help and other support to hundreds of Catholic priests accused of UAL abuse across the country. Stripped of their collars and cassocks, they went unnoticed, and neighbors said they had no idea that some of the dressed-down clergymen dining at local restaurants were accused UAL predators. The group also supported priests jailed for UAL abuse, including giving commissary cash to serial pedophile who assaulted dozens of minors. Obispano was founded by Joe Marr and Peter Ferrara, who have stepped down. BDailyMail.com reporter and Associated Press published, 1853 British Summer Time, the 29th of July, 2019, updated, 1959 British Summer Time, the 29th of July, 2019. Secretive Catholic group, Obispano, file image, which operates out of Michigan, has served as a rapid response team for priests who have been accused of UAL abuse for nearly 2 decades. A secretive Catholic group operating out of a small Michigan town has reportedly served as a rapid response team to protect hundreds of priests accused of UAL abuse. The small non-profit group, Obispano Sacerdote, would reportedly work out of a series of unmarked buildings in rural Michigan, providing money, shelter, transport, legal help and other support to hundreds, perhaps thousands, of Catholic priests accused of UAL abuse across the country. Stripped of their collars and cassocks, they went unnoticed in the small town of Dryden as they were escorted into a dingy warehouse across from an elementary school playground, the Associated Press reported. Neighbors said they had no idea some of the dressed-down clergymen dining at local restaurants in the rural town might have been accused UAL predators. But they had been brought to town by Obispano, when a serial pedophile was sent to jail for abusing dozens of minors. Obispano was there for him, with regular visits and commissary cash. When a priest admitted dually assaulting boys under 14, Obispano raised funds for his defense. When another priest was criminally charged with abusing a teen, Obispano later made him a legal advisor. And while powerful clerics have publicly pledged to hold the church accountable for the crimes of its clergy and help survivors heal, some of them arranged meetings, offered blessings or quietly sent checks to this organization that provided support to alleged abusers, the Associated Press has found. The small non-profit group, Obispano Sacerdote, would reportedly work out of a series of unmarked buildings in Dryden, Michigan, providing money, shelter, transport, legal help and other support to hundreds of Catholic priests accused of UAL abuse across the country. Obispano focuses on what it considers the neglected victims, priests, and the church itself. All of these people that have made allegations are very well taken care of, Obispano co-founder Joe Marr, pictured, said in a radio interview. Marr, left, and fellow co-founder Peter Ferrara, right, who had worked in accounting, would mobilize, picking priests up in person, or buying them plane tickets, then moving them into a hotel, an apartment or one of several halfway houses. Though Catholic leaders deny the church has any official relationship with the group, Obispano's success forged networks reaching all the way to the Vatican. The Associated Press unraveled the continuing story of Obispano in dozens of interviews with experts, lawyers, clergy members and former employees, along with hundreds of pages of documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests. In recent months, 2 of the group's founders were forced out after Michigan's Attorney General found that Obispano had misused donated funds and misled contributors. A third co-founder, a priest, was abruptly removed from the ministry earlier this month after the AP began asking about an allegation that he had dually abused a child decades ago. Still, since 2002, Obispano has played a little-known role among conservative Catholic groups that portray the abuse scandal as a media and legal feeding frenzy. These groups contend the scandal maligns the priesthood and harms the faith. Obispano established itself as a counterpoint to the survivors' network of those abused by priests and other groups that have accused the Church of trying to cover up the scandal and failing to support victims of clergy misconduct. Obispano focuses on what it considers the neglected victims, priests, and the Church itself. All of these people that have made allegations are very well taken care of. Obispano co-founder Joe Mar said in a radio interview, contending that many abuse accusations lodged against priests are false. Obispano's roots reach back almost 2 decades to an abuse scandal that convulsed the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Church. File image, a grand stone structure set amid Detroit's crumbling brick blight. For 25 years, the Rev. Eduard Peroni, pictured, presided there. Peroni was recently removed from ministry after a church review board decided there was a semblance of truth to allegations that he abused a child decades ago. Peroni, pictured on June 7, said he never would have done such a thing, when asked about the claims. In the years before Peroni helped start Obispano, he and Assumption Grotto took in 2 priests who had been accused of UAL misconduct. A dioceses in other states that priests are not at all very well taken care of. Obispano's roots reach back almost 2 decades to a UAL abuse scandal that convulsed the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary Church, a grand stone structure set amid Detroit's crumbling brick blight. For 25 years, the Rev. Eduard Peroni presided there. Inside the church, commonly known as Assumption Grotto, glossy Obispano brochures tout the pastor's role as the group's co-founder and spiritual lifeblood. Stern and imposing, the 70-year-old Peroni is a staunch conservative. He refused to marry couples, for example, if he thought the bride's dress was too revealing. Earlier this month, his parishioners were shocked when Peroni was removed from ministry after a church review board decided there was a semblance of truth to allegations that he abused a child decades ago. Peroni told the AP that he never would have done such a thing. In the years before Peroni helped start Obispano, he and Assumption Grotto took in at least 2 priests who had been accused of UAL misconduct at dioceses in other states. One of them later admitted to molesting as many as 50 children in the 1980s and 1990s, according to court documents in Texas. In 1999, Peroni welcomed the other priest, a West African clergyman named Kamlang Demhounjame, to come work at Assumption Grotto. 2 years later, Detroit Archdiocese officials say they asked Hounjame to return to his home country, Togo, after learning of accusations of UAL misconduct against him in Detroit and at an earlier posting in Florida. Instead, he went to a treatment facility in St. Louis. In 2002, Detroit police charged him with dually assaulting a member of Assumption Grotto's choir. The 48-year-old parishioner who accused Hounjame of rape said Peroni's response was to protect the church, testifying in court that he told her, "Just walk by him and ignore him." Peroni responded to the charges against Hounjame by asking the congregation to support the priest in his time of crisis. Joe Mar was among those who were moved by Peroni's plea for help. Mar grew up Catholic in the Midwest, then headed to California, where, he said in a podcast, he found work producing live entertainment for Hollywood award shows and other events. "I had access to all the studios," Mar said. He told a radio interview where he found his faith again in California before moving his family back to Michigan. In 1999, Peroni welcomed Kamlang Demhounjame, pictured, to come work at Assumption Grotto. 2 years later, Detroit Archdiocese officials say they asked Hounjame to return to his home country, Togo, after learning of accusations of UAL misconduct against him. Her led the effort to support Hounjame, serving as media spokesman for the accused priest during the case. Mar even brought the priest home to live with his family, according to his daughter Mary Rose, who was about 10 at the time. In court files, the AP found 2 other women at Assumption Grotto also had told police about UAL misconduct by Hounjame. But their testimony was never heard in court. When the case went to trial, it was essentially her word against the priest, said then prosecutor Maria Miller. Hounjame was acquitted and moved to Las Vegas. He told the AP that Peroni had been a real friend. Mar, meanwhile, was inundated with calls from other desperate priests begging for help. Out of those pleas, Obispano was launched. Around the clock, the organization's main number rang through to Mar's cell phone. Mar and fellow co-founder Peter Ferrara, who had worked in accounting, would mobilize, picking priests up in person or buying them plane tickets, then moving them into a hotel, an apartment or one of several, halfway houses. We're on our way to help a priest in need in the Midwest. Say it's going to be a long trip and not much sleep, and it could be potentially a dangerous situation, Maher said in a homemade video posted on Obispano's Facebook page. He didn't explain why the mission might be dangerous. Obispano's client list is confidential, but its promotional brochures say it has helped more than 8,000 priests. The Michigan Attorney General estimates the real number is closer to 1,000. One of those was Rev. Gregory Ingles, a well-known priest in San Francisco's Archdiocese who was charged in 2003 with abusing a 15-year-old boy in the 1970s. The criminal charges were dismissed after California's extended statute of limitations was ruled unconstitutional, but the Archdiocese later settled the lawsuit filed by another Ingles accuser. Obispano made Ingles one of its advisors on canon, or church, law. When reached by the AP, Ingles said the allegations against him were false and said his involvement with Obispano was minimal. With Obispano, I only answered canon law questions that they had before I hit retirement age, he said. The group also provided support to Jason Sigler, a former Detroit priest convicted of molesting dozens of children in New Mexico and Michigan. In court files, the AP found 2 other women at Assumption Grotto. File image also had told police about UAL misconduct by Hound James. But their testimony was never heard in court in a lawsuit. One former altar boy said Sigler forced him into hundreds of UAL abuse events, each a violation of criminal UAL penetration laws. Maher visited Sigler in prison regularly, funded his commissary account and took his calls, said Mary Rose Maher. She also said her father introduced her to Sigler before and after he was sentenced to prison, and put her on the phone with him while he was behind bars. I really didn't know who Jason was. I had only met him once and I didn't understand why I had to speak to a priest in prison, she said. She told the AP that while she was still a teenager, she and her homeschooled friends began working for her father's organization, and often spent time with men who were accused of abuse. Sometimes Mary Rose, her father and other employees would meet with accused priests, drive them around town and take them to lunch, she said. Obispano also hired accused priest Dennis Drugan, who headed a Catholic seminary high school in Wisconsin for more than a decade. Drugan was put on administrative leave in July 2012 after allegations surfaced that he had engaged in UAL misconduct with a minor at a Catholic high school for Native American teens in Montana in the 1980s. Drugan was later removed from public ministry, according to a 2013 audit of the Capuchin province where he served, and is no longer a member of the order, said the province spokesman Tim Hinkle. Instead, Drugan went to work for Obispano. According to employment records the group turned over to Michigan's Attorney General. Drugan occasionally visited Obispano's office to say mass or conduct other business, according to Mary Rose Maher. She recalled sitting at his side for lessons on fundraising. When contacted by the AP, Drugan said he no longer works for Obispano and declined further comment. Another former priest, Robert Keeley, was sent by church officials in Chicago to Obispano for monitoring therapy in 2003 after admitting he abused teens. The group described him as an advisor on church law. Earlier, Keeley himself had helped handle abuse cases for the church. Now his out-of-town trips had to be approved by the Chicago Archdiocese, and documents show they outsourced his monitoring to Maher, who was listed as his therapist, spiritual leader, doctor, monitor, even though there is no indication Maher is a licensed therapist. Keeley also attended a conference Obispano put on in Detroit, monitored by Monsignor William Varvaro, a former president of the Canon Law Society of America and an early Obispano advisor, records show. Keeley did not respond to requests for comment. Varvaro died in 2007. From the very beginning, the group won backing from influential members of the Roman Catholic hierarchy who were eager to advocate for the rights of accused priests. In 2002, Maher sent a news article about Obispano to Father Richard John Newhouse, the editor of a conservative Catholic journal who served as an unofficial advisor to President George W. Bush. Some priests have suggested I write to you and let you know what we're doing, Marr told Newhouse. More power to you, Newhouse replied in a letter the AP located in archives at the Catholic University of America. The demand that a person must be punished, no matter how long ago the offense, or the repentance and transformation of the offender has nothing more than a demand for vengeance, Peroni, pictured, told an interviewer in 2013 that Obispano's relationship with the Roman Catholic Church was deliberately arm's length. Newhouse introduced Marr to his friend Cardinal Avery Dulles, the son of John Foster Dulles, the former U.S. Secretary of State. Dulles was a preeminent conservative Catholic theologian in his 2 decades at Fordham University. Both men became Obispano's theological advisors. Correspondence shows they forged critical connections for Marr in Rome with at least 3 powerful Vatican officials. Photographs of American Cardinals Raymond Burke and Edmund Zocca were displayed in the group's promotional materials, along with pictures of other high-ranking church officials who paid calls to the group's Michigan headquarters. Others sent donations. Cardinal Edwin O'Brien, the former Archbishop of Baltimore and now a Vatican official, said he occasionally sent money to Obispano over the years but has not done so in at least a year. He said he never met Marr, Ferrara or other founding members and never visited Michigan. I saw some charity being done and wanted to encourage them. They were very appreciative, O'Brien said, but added that the next time the group reaches out, he will ask that his photo be removed from its Facebook page. Vatican spokesman Alessandro Giustotti said the only contact between the Vatican and the U.S. group that he was aware of was the receipt of some promotional materials from Obispano years ago. He was not aware of a response. Don Hangen, an auxiliary bishop in Detroit, said he was surprised his images were featured on the group's website and in brochures. Hanchen told the AP he might have sent in a donation, but the photograph seems like I'm a big supporter, and that's just not the truth. Zocca died in 2014 and Burke could not be reached for comment. Peroni told an interviewer in 2013 that Obispano's relationship with the Roman Catholic Church was deliberately arm's length. The Church benefits from what we're doing but it doesn't give it the support, he said. The whole point of this is to be a counterpoint to a movement which is also outside the Church, a movement of dissent and against the priesthood, but the group also presented itself as deeply entwined with the Church, right down to its name, which means work for the good of the priesthood. Use of the Latin, which is the official language of the Church, helps to identify OBS with the Catholic Church in Rome and the papacy, the group's founding documents note. In addition to courting religious leaders, Obispano also has benefited from connections to wealthy U.S. Catholics. A radio network founded by Tom Monahan, a billionaire Domino's Pizza founder who later advised President Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, interviewed Marr and Peroni and promoted Obispano's work, according to archived Ave Maria radio recordings. Monahan's Ave Maria Foundation also sponsored a community talk Marr gave at a Detroit hotel, according to the recordings, and a former chaplain at Florida-based Ave Maria School of Law, which Monahan founded and on whose board he serves, was listed as an Obispano advisor on the group's website. A spokesman for Monahan declined to comment on Obispano. Joe Marr has said that Monahan never made any direct donations to the group. In their 4 locations over 17 years, 3 of them in towns in rural Michigan, the group didn't post signs. In 2005, in Oxford, Michigan, Obispano retrofitted one side of an old metal casting facility adjacent to a high school for its headquarters. At noon, metal workers would halt their noisy work to let Obispano staffers observe Mass and sometimes join in prayer, 2 former employees of the group said. The group's next move, in 2014, was 20 miles away to the village of Dryden. Local officials were puzzled when they heard Marr and Ferrara wanted to set up a Hollywood-style production studio in a dilapidated warehouse off Main Street, again facing an elementary school playground. Nothing was mentioned about priests. They were very tight-lipped and never talked about anything having to do with priests, said Jerome Edwards, a building and zoning official in Dryden. They were just trying to go unseen. Each week inside the warehouse, office workers mailed out appeals to potential donors in envelopes featuring pictures of the Pope. The letters inside, as well as postings on the group's website, included testimonials describing the purported experiences of priests who'd faced desperate crises, including false accusations of UAL abuse. One testimonial from May 2018, for example, claimed that Father David had been stalked by a mentally unbalanced parishioner who had accused him of UAL misconduct after he turned down her offers of gifts and money. Even when a priest has done absolutely nothing wrong, the testimonial asserted, the church will sometimes go to the nth degree, including subjecting some priests to unwarranted psychological trauma, and a very long way to return to active ministry, all to appease a terribly aggressive accuser. The testimonials, however, were misleading. An investigation by Michigan's Attorney General found Obispano's lawyers conceded to state investigators that Maher had concocted them by stitching together stories from various priests. The state's investigation began after it was contacted by a once loyal Obispano employee, Maher's own daughter, Mary Rose, now 27. In February 2017, she wrote a letter to the state attorney general accusing the group of financial misconduct. A simple investigation into the Michigan nonprofit charity Obispano Sacerdote would bring to light the millions of embezzled dollars, years of mail fraud, and the constant systemic abuse of donations, she wrote. The tip landed on the desk of Assistant Attorney General William Bloomfield, a devout Catholic with a law degree from Ave Maria. The investigation lasted more than a year. Investigators concluded the group's fundraising solicitations had been deceptive. Mary Rose Maher, the daughter of Obispano co-founder Joe Maher, recently launched her own non-profit group. She says the group will support survivors of UAL abuse. He also found that Maher and Ferrara had violated state charity laws by using donated funds to cover such personal expenses as sushi lunches, chiropractor visits and power tools to work on their homes, according to a cease and desist order filed by Michigan's Attorney General. Over the years, as the group grew richer, financial records show donations increased from $73,000 in 2002 to $1.3 million in 2016. Maher's pay soared from $40,500 to $212,000. Ferrara's rose from $16,300 to $316,000. Maher and Ferrara took what they wanted, when they wanted it, the Attorney General's office wrote, demanding repayment of more than $500,000. A former board member, J. Michael Kerrigan, a former Smithsonian Institution director, said that whatever the co-founders paid themselves was only to reimburse the tens of thousands of dollars they spent out of their own pockets supporting priests in Obispano's early days. Ultimately, Bloomfield oversaw a settlement last December that required Obispano to pay $10,000 to cover the costs of the state's investigation and forced Ferrara and Maher from their jobs at the nonprofit. The group's entire board of directors was replaced. Within weeks of the settlement, Bloomfield left his job at the Attorney General's office and took a job with the Catholic Diocese of Lansing, Michigan, as general counsel. Bloomfield said his work on the investigation did not represent a conflict of interest because Obispano is a non-profit, separate from the church. But 4 years before Bloomfield began directing the state's investigation of Obispano, he attended a service chanted by Peroni in the Assumption Grotto choir that moved him to a deep and joyful praise of God. He wrote on Facebook, Bloomfield told the AP his parents knew Peroni and that he had attended services at Assumption Grotto on occasion as a youth. Bloomfield also sells religious texts through his own imprint, Sacred Art series, which sometimes can be found for sale at Assumption Grotto's gift shop, a clerk said. Bloomfield said he has never sold books there directly, but added it's possible that his mother, who served on a non-profit board with Peroni, may have dropped off some copies. Despite the settlement, the story of Obispano continues to unfold. The Archdiocese of Detroit has asked the Vatican to review the UAL misconduct allegations against Father Peroni. Mary Rose Maher recently launched her own non-profit group. She says the group will support survivors of UAL abuse, positioning it squarely in opposition to her father's organization even as she adapts some of its tactics, offering shelter, legal representation and emotional and financial help. She is soliciting donations to build a safe haven house, and raising money by selling tickets to a banquet that will be held at an as-yet-determined date. Her father, who was required by the state to never again run a non-profit in Michigan, has launched a second non-profit that seems to have the identical mission of helping priests in need. The new group is called Men of Melchizedek, a reference to an Old Testament figure who was thought to be both a king and a priest. It is registered in Indiana, but its website says its principal